Okay, brother, here we go.
All right, we're good. We're good. Things are working out. Hey, Brett, thanks for tuning back in. What's up, Mike? Gabby. Okay, we're gonna get this started. How's it going, man? How you doing, Fairai?
I'm doing fantastic, my brother. How are you?
Good. It's been a hot day, man. It's a
Yeah,
good day to work out. Yeah.
you're over in Kaneohe side, right?
Yes.
Right on.
Yeah. Kaneohe, the windward side, the nice. Everybody loves the side of the island.
Yeah,
It's always floral.
yeah, man. I actually, my mother is a Kaneohe girl, so I would come here every Christmas and then like many summers, and usually in the summer I'd stay for like 2 3 months, and so I
Mhm,
kind of grew up here.
mhm.
and that's where I grew up, right near the golf course, Pahikawa Street.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. I know. Yeah, exactly where that is.
my Tutu Blanche lived over there, so yeah. I don't know if you know like the Ma'a family. That's my mom's side. She's a Ma'a, like Pono Ma'a,
Hmm.
like a Ma'a I am.
Hmm. Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, thanks for jumping on, and hopefully we'll have more people come in. But if for our audience here, would you want to talk about how you got into the film industry and um, a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So this is a good story. So my my grandmother is from here. She's from she's actually originally from Maui, and then her family, my family, they all were raised on Lusitania Street in town.
Hmm.
And my grandfather was is from Tahiti on my dad's side.
Hmm.
So my my grandfather was a singer and musician, and he was living in Tahiti.
Hmm.
And back in the 1950s, they made a movie over there called Mutiny on the Bounty with Marlon Brando, which was an MGM movie. So
Hmm.
half of the first half of the movie was all shot in Tahiti. I don't know
Nice.
if you've ever seen that movie, but it's beautiful.
Mm.
Like you're talking like 100 Tahitian people in the water while these gigantic ships are coming in, and
Mm.
it's just epic, right? To think about how
Wow.
movie,
Hmm.
in the days of like when they made like Lawrence of Arabia and like all those epic movies.
Hmm.
So my grandfather was in that movie. They went over to make the movie, and my grandfather spoke um, Tahitian, French, and a little bit of English, and
Mm.
wrote a song that ended up in the movie. So when the movie came back to shoot at the studios at MGM, they brought my grandfather back, and and my grandfather was working on the movie here uh,
Hmm.
in Los Angeles, but in America.
Hmm.
And so that's like how we got into the film industry, um,
Mm.
by by random twist of fate. My grandfather would work as a background artist. He would work as a musician. Back in those days, they had there was like a lot of like singing and dancing in the in those movies, and so there was a lot of work for a guy like my grandfather. His name
Hmm.
was Leo Richmond, and
Mm.
it's funny. His name was actually Fairai Richmond, but
Oh.
but because he didn't speak that great of English,
Hmm.
they he changed his name to Leo Richmond to make his life a little bit easier. He changed
Mm.
his name to Leo, which was his middle name.
Hmm.
And then when I was born, my father gave me my grandfather's name to make my life a little tougher. No, I'm just kidding. It definitely wasn't. It wasn't easy. Now it's kind of very common to have an interestingly unusual name. But back in those days, kids were like fry rye, fried rice. You know, the first day in films in high school, my they called me to the office and they're like, "Well, Fairy Richmond, please come to the office."
Hmm.
The way it's spelled. So that wasn't good, and I definitely didn't go to the office. Uh, but so anyways, yeah, and then my father grew up and in the film industry with my grandfather on movie sets, and then my dad was an exceptional athlete, and he in high school he threw 2 games no hitter. He was a pitcher. So
Wow.
right out of and yeah, he's on the front of the Los Angeles Times like twice.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so
Uh,
right in high school he was drafted to the St. Louis Cardinals, but the thing was is that his hip, he had a bad hip, and
mhm.
he was slow. I mean, he's not that slow, but compared to the major leagues, he wasn't fast enough. So
Mhm.
that kind of ended, and my dad and my grandfather, they kind of grew up in poverty. You know,
Mhm.
being in the film industry it's not the most glamorous life. You know what I mean? People think, oh,
Mhm.
there's about like 2 to 3% of people that live a glamorous life as an artist in the film industry. The rest of us are, we're struggling artists, and
Mhm.
we do it because we have to, right? We love art, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's the whole thing. So they grew up. My dad grew up in poverty, and a lot of times, my grandfather wasn't working because it's inconsistent work. So they were living out of cars and they're living on the streets and stuff.
Mhm.
And and um, my dad got, he lost his baseball contract, and so he was looking for a way out of poverty, and so he decided to try to be an actor. And he would work. He would flip burgers. He would work background extra work, and just hustle. And and eventually he got into stunts. And we were young. My brother and I were young, and my dad had 2 kids at home, very young. Had his first child at 20 something, very early 20s, and then
Mhm.
his second at like 24, me at like 24. And so my dad's whole reason to become successful had nothing to do with trying to become famous or anything. My dad had 2 kids at home, and then at the time my grandfather was dying. So
Mhm.
he had children at home. Actually, I take that back. By the time I was born, my grandfather had already died. So my dad was kind of alone.
Mhm.
And um, so my dad would try to outperform people because he had mouths to feed, and nothing to do with trying to become rich and famous.
Mhm.
It was necessity, right? Because
Right. Survival
yeah,
at that
he
point.
had always lived in poverty for like the first
Mhm.
20 years of his life. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So one day, I think one of the stunt coordinators on a show said, line up the 10 stunt guys and have each one of them say the line, which is like whatever the line was, give me the money or your wife gets it or whatever. And my dad would just,
Mhm.
give me that fucking money. You know what I mean? He would just outperform everybody because
Mhm.
these other guys didn't have any kids at home. You know what I mean? And he had
Mhm.
mouths to feed. And that was kind of his motivation was fear.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
fear of poverty, fear of his children growing up in poverty like he did.
Mhm.
And so my dad found some success, and which is tough for a brown guy in Hollywood, but
Mhm.
especially at those times, and he found some success as a stuntman and then eventually as an actor. And he would always bring us on movie sets um, when he could while he worked. And
Mhm.
he tried everything he could to get his children as far away from the film industry as possible because it's not made for everybody,
Mhm.
But at the time when I was young, my older brother was in his when my dad started to find some success, my older brother was a little bit older.
Mhm.
And so and I was still a child. So my dad started to kind of find some success around like 6 years old. When I was like 6 years old, he got on like Baywatch,
Mhm.
and then he kind of it kind of started to rise while I was like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So at that time, I really wasn't into girls, or I wasn't that heavily into sports like my older brother was, right? Because he was already like 13, 14, right? So he was doing his own thing. He had his own friends and stuff. And so for me, when I would go on movie sets with my dad, it was just all magical, right? I mean, I remember I went on the set of Batman Returns. My dad was in the Batman Returns. He played a killer clown. And I just remember, like seeing the Batmobile and seeing Danny DeVito and being on the back of the Warner Brothers lot. And I was just like, oh man, this is like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I caught the bug. On top of the fact that I was always creative, I could always draw, and I just have a creative brain. I'm scholastically, I'm not the best. I never got the best grades. I had a hard time in school, and so for me, that was always I was hooked. And so at a very early age, I would always ask my dad if I can use his video camera. Back then, it was the top loader Minolta. It was like this big. I don't even know if Minolta makes cameras or anything like that anymore. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But and so I started to play around with my dad's camera, and that was it, man. On top of the fact that my dad was also super strict, so he would like never let me go anywhere. So I never really went over friends' houses or had friends come over, especially because like my dad would always make my friends work when they came over. I spent a lot of time with that camera and my toys. And, sometimes I'd have friends or my brothers and sister be in my little movies, and I would just sit and make movies. I mean, I probably made, I don't even know, man, hundreds of little short films. You know what I mean? I was just like, it was like an everyday thing. You know what I mean? I would come home, I'd do my homework, and then I'd take the camera, I'd set up my Star Wars G.I. Joe's toys, and I would make little movies, and I would have fireworks, and I'd blow stuff up, and then I would just make these little short films so I could watch them over and over and over and over and over again. And then my knowledge from being on set with my dad, I understood like somewhat how they made movies. So from an early age, I understood the process of making movies, and the way that I watched movies was very, over analytical, right? I would just be like wondering how they pulled something off. So almost every time I'd watch a movie, I'd try to go and replicate what they did in that movie. So if there were buildings that were blowing up, I'd take cardboard boxes and fireworks and blow them up with my toys. And that was the majority of my childhood. I even through high school, I was kind of a nerd, and I was in the audio video club and in the media club, and I would just make movies, and people would think, oh, that guy is so freaking nerdy. Why isn't he smoking weed and going to football games? But I didn't really care about that. I just cared about making movies, and and that's what I did. And so yeah, and that's always been my thing. There's some people who are good at sports. I mean, I play sports, but there's people who are interested in those things, and that's their life. And for me, it was always movies. Movies have been my life for almost my entire life. That's been my love and my passion. Yeah.
And your family is deeply rooted in the film industry, so definitely being around that environment, you grew to love it as well. You were born into the film industry pretty much.
Yeah,
Because,
by luck of like I said, it was all by chance, right? My grandfather, and then my father, and and I'd say that, being a creative person, filmmaking is like the most, what do you call that? It's like the most advanced art form that we have, right? Because some people like costume design. I love costume design. I love makeup and hair. I love acting. I love stunts. I love special effects. I love photography. I love videography. and I love, most of all, I love telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
So you take all those art forms and you have them all in one, and honestly, honest to God, it's really what happened is I'm like a hypersensitive person. I was always very shy, and I had some demons, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
movies were that one thing that always helped me throughout my life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It always like when I would have dark times or self doubt, or I'd be I'd be yeah, I'd be going through some struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Movies would really uplift me, and they stay with you. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
like a beautiful song or something. When you go and watch a movie, that thing is it's stained into your memory,
Mm-hmm.
and it could really live with you for the next day, for the next week, or for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? It can have an indelible effect on you. You know, you can make you a better person, more kind to people, have more empathy for people. It can make you,
Mm-hmm.
it can give you courage. And for a guy like me, movies have just they've really shaped who I am. You know what I mean? Whoever that may be, you know what I mean? But I'm like, sometimes I would like, in conversations, I would like repeat movie lines to people while they talk to me, because just to come off as smart or whatever. Or
Mm-hmm.
I find the solutions of life through movies, and a lot of what I've learned in life all came from, like a large majority of it just came from movies. So
Mm-hmm. And kind of going into storytelling, because you consider yourself a storyteller. We're also gonna go through some of these questions too. I've seen one about advice about for young aspiring filmmakers and your inspirations. But I want to talk about your movie Higher. And there was a question earlier about the date on filming and if it's pushed back. But talk about Higher, how that came about, and where it is right now in production.
so it's an interesting question. So I have a friend, and we had been making short films um, for the past couple years, and I'd help him with his film, and then he helped me with mine, and that's just something I always did, right? I always made short films,
Mhm.
and one day we were on the set of one of my shorts, and he was telling me about an idea that he had, where he was going to shoot. He really wanted to make a feature film because he thought that shooting short films, as fun as they were, they didn't have as much value as a feature film.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
he um, had this idea where he was going to take this one short film idea, but then branch it out into um, like branch the story out, and branch the characters out, so that um, they would all go to different places, and it would be like 5 different short films at the same time,
Mhm.
and each one would be like around 15 minutes.
Mhm.
And um, and then he said, it's going to be easy because I've already made so many short films. I know I can make a short film.
Mhm.
Um, it'll just be like making 5 short films, and then I'll have a feature, and I'll have something of value, and um, I'll be able to distribute that, and I can make my name as a director, and I can have something of that's more valuable than a short film. And
Mhm.
the moment that he said that, it struck something in my mind. When you're hanging around with people that are doing the same thing as you, that inspiration can be contagious, and it can bounce off of each other. You know what I mean? That's what
Mhm.
that's why
Right.
I always suggest people, if they're trying to do something, hang around with people that are doing the same thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it just it helps that momentum. And so he kind of stuck that idea in my head, and it was like a stream of consciousness, to tell you the honest to God truth. I you know, I had been writing this feature film for many years, and it's a science fiction film, like a post-apocalyptic science fiction film that was kind of like very personal to me about some of the experiences in my life. And and in that one night that we talked about his film, I walked up and down my street, and I thought of the whole entire plot of Higher came to me.
Wow, amazing.
And then what I did was I went upstairs. It was so fresh, and you know, in my mind, and I went upstairs and I typed it all out into like a treatment form, or like you know, just like the bullet point, play by play. And then I started to add to that, add more, and it was I think it was a Saturday that we were filming, so I stayed up like all the way until Sunday night, and I just wrote every idea that I had about that movie. And it was like as if any idea that was coming into my mind at the time, it was all funneling into that movie. And so what I did was the next day I took my girlfriend out to lunch, and she is the perfect critic because she has a high standard for things. You know what I mean? If it's crap, she'll tell you it's crap. You know what I mean? She really loves independent films more than anything, right? Because she finds that blockbuster movies are kind of like product, and they're made for the mass amounts of people. And she really is into, like, you know, stuff that is changing the form and very unexpected and unpredictable. So we were sitting at this restaurant, and I said, and she's my girlfriend, so she doesn't listen to me anyways, you know what I mean? And we sat down, and she had her pasta there, and I said, I'm going to tell you the idea for this movie, and I'm very excited, you know, to tell it to her. The first person I'm going to tell. And I told her the story, and it took me 15 minutes to kind of go through the whole thing. And she hadn't touched her food. Her food had gotten cold. She just listened to me the whole time. And, you know, people in the restaurant are like looking at us because I'm like, and then this happens, and then, you know. And then she just told me, you know, you need to make that movie. Like, if you can make the movie that you just told me right now, if you can make that visually, I think that could help a lot of people. I think it could entertain a lot of people, but I think it honestly could help a lot of people. And I just remember that moment being like, okay, I've got something here. I feel like I've got something here. You know what I mean? And the thing about it is that, you know, I'll go into this now, but I went through a lot of struggles in my life, you know. In my late teens and my early 20s, I was a very sheltered child. And when I finally kind of got out on my own, I started to experiment with drugs and alcohol. And I was very shy as a child. So when I found alcohol and drugs, it like relieved me of myself. Like, for the first time, I felt comfortable in my own skin, and it was like a gift. And it's also like a gift for somebody who's creative, you know what I mean? Because now I have like zero inhibitions from like what comes out of my head to what I put down on paper, or what I videotape, or whatever, right? Or what I paint, what I create. It's like it just comes out, it flows out easily, right? And that kind of became a gift at that time in my life, right? I would make a lot of short films, and I wouldn't hesitate on the idea. I had a lot of courage, and I would just make stuff constantly, you know, because I was so high and I was drunk, you know what I mean? And I was young and stupid. And eventually that gift became my curse, because the way that my body metabolizes alcohol, I could do a lot, you know what I mean? So there would be like, I just remember being young, and there'd be gigantic guys that would be drinking with us, and they would be like throwing up and dizzy, and they couldn't handle it. And I could just keep consuming stuff. As wiry and skinny as I am, I could just do it. And so eventually that became no good for me anymore. And so I struggled, you know what I mean? I struggled with it because I didn't want to let it go because it had given me so much in my life, right? It was my source of inspiration. It was my source of courage. It gave me my art. But then what happened is, and that's a history of a lot of artists, right? I mean, Ernest Hemingway, Jackson Pollock, I mean, you name it, right? There's been many famous painters and authors and, you know, filmmakers, musicians, right? That's where a lot of great art comes from, right? And so you know, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, you know, and so God bless their souls. And so but it was hurting me, and so I had to give it up, and that was a tough thing for me mentally and, you know, in every way, right? And it took me a few years to do it. You know, I struggled with it. I would try to you know, get sober, and then I would go back on it because I was never really doing it for myself, and then eventually one day, 4 years ago, I met this girl, Yoza, and I hadn't been with, I hadn't had a relationship in a long time. You know, I had a relationship with my drugs and alcohol. You know what I mean? And she kind of brought it out of me, and we got together really quick. We became friends, and then we became lovers, and then we got pregnant almost like a month after meeting each other. And that really gave my life real meaning, and I never hesitated about it. I just went after it. And I wasn't even working at the time, but I just knew that it was the right thing to do. And that's when I finally got clean and sober for myself, and then the whole world opened up for me. You know, it's kind of like there's a great saying. You know, the saying goes, you know, alcohol and drugs gave me wings, and then God took away the sky. And that's kind of how it is for a lot of people, you know what I mean, that are in my position. And so that's how it was for me. But then when I got clean and sober, you know, alcohol and drugs had robbed me of my art, you know, because for many years, I would say 6-7 years, I just wasn't really making anything. I would always draw, I would always write poetry, I would always write stuff, and I was always creating stuff, but I wasn't really executing anything. And as soon as I got clean and sober, everything opened up, and I started making music videos for her, little small ones. But the first thing that I made when we had gotten together was a music video that I shot on an iPhone, and within the first 2 days, 64,000 people had watched it, and like 500 people had shared it. And it was like it was that sign. It was like a sign from God, the force, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It was a sign saying, no, look, dude, like you can still do this thing. You know what I mean? And you it doesn't even matter what tool you have. You can still do it, and you can still have an effect on people, because the comments and everything were really great, and people were really relating to it. And it was a music video about being in love with your iPhone. It's called Can I Be? It's about a boyfriend. Yeah, it's about a boyfriend that's in love with his iPhone and shows the girl no love or attention. So I had gotten back into that, and I had started making stuff. So now I'll go back to the story. Sorry, but I'll go back to the story of the movie. And so the movie Higher is basically it's like a lot of my life experiences, very dear to my heart, very dark, some of them, and the experiences of a lot of my friends, and then a little bit of my imagination to sort of make it cinematic and to make it work. And so yeah, and you know the thing about it is when I was young, I was making a lot of projects and I'm making a lot of short films and stuff, but I was really just emulating my heroes, and I was really just making stuff like other people made, right? I really wasn't making anything personal, and I felt like I really didn't have a voice. And after all of my struggles in life, it really gave me life experience, and it really gave me something to say. And that is what the movie Hire is. It's my way of expressing my struggles and my past and dealing with all that stuff, and bringing them front and center, and in the hopes of, you know, hopefully some other people, there are other people out there that can watch it and relate to it, and you know, that's really all we can hope to do as filmmakers is to see if we can have a positive effect on people. Like movies, yeah, movies have saved my life. So if I can help somebody's day, I don't know if it's going to save anybody's life, but you know what I mean. If it can help somebody's day or have a positive effect on one moment of their life, then it's all worth it. You know what I mean? And that's really my goal in this world. You know, is to, if my movie can. Mel Gibson has this thing where he says, you know, the first thing is to entertain. So if you have to entertain people, because that's how you're going to keep them in the seat. That's how you got to keep their focus on the screen, right? It's called the 3 E's. So you have to entertain them, and then if you can educate them, then that's just another bonus, right? If you're making them go, oh, I didn't know about that, or I didn't realize that, and then if you can pull off the last E, which is enlighten them, then you've literally hit the grand slam. And so that's really my mission, is to educate, is to entertain, educate, and enlighten people. And if I could do that for just a moment of their day, then
it's all worth it.
So, you know, because it's been a process, you know. I'll go into this. It's been a process, you know. I had thought of this movie for it was 2 years ago, right? And then I wanted to make it right away, but then I was trying to find the right actors, and it's a big movie. It's not a small movie. I mean, it's a simple movie. It's a simple movie. It's not very expensive, but there's a lot of actors, right? It's an ensemble movie, so there's a ton of actors. There's like, you know, 7 lead actors. Then there's like a ton of little mini parts, and they're all really good. And then there's a little bit of action, some special effects, and a lot of locations. So I didn't set out to make the easiest movie, which isn't. If there's anybody who's is an aspiring filmmaker, don't do that. You know, especially start with something simple that you can actually pull off because if you don't, then it's just a movie that exists in your head and nowhere else. But luckily, you know, it's been so worth it, and I've stuck to my guns, and it's not like I haven't been doing anything for the last 2 years. So, you know, for the last 2 years, we shot a proof of concept, which is basically the first 3 scenes of the movie, to show myself and supporters, investors, and like anybody else, what the script looks like on screen, you know, and what it would look like for no money. You know what I mean? So at the cheapest form, this is what it could look like. And if we had a little bit of money, obviously, then it'll look a whole lot better. But this is what it looks like for no money, and that's called a proof of concept. And that's what a lot of movies have done to get made, right? You show people this is what it looks like, so then they go, okay, you know, here's a check. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, we believe in this. And that's like, you know, there's a movie called The Peanut Butter Falcon last year. That was like the highest grossing film of last year. independently, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what they did, right? They made a proof of concept for $20,000, and they got $6 million, and they got Shia LaBeouf to go to Dakota Johnson and Thomas Hayden Church, and they went out and made that movie, and that movie made them back $190 million, right? So that was a good investment. And so we shot a proof of concept, and then I shot a concept trailer, which is what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to sort of show people when we finish the movie, this is how it'll be advertised, and this is the scope of the film, and this is the feeling of the film. And yeah, and I shot both of those things, and then I made a bunch of art, and I revised the script, and I started to assemble a really great cast, and started talking to some name actors to fill in a bunch of the other parts. And then I've been working with a script doctor and a bunch of my friends to kind of like get the script to as perfect as I possibly can, so that, you know, I feel it's the best it can be. And then obviously it was tough because I was working on Hawaii Five-0, and you know, it's tough to get anything done when you're working 16 hours a day, sometimes 6-7 days a week. And then, you know, last summer I was going to shoot, but then I went off and I made another movie in Maui, Aloha Surf Hotel, that comes out soon. And then I got another job that was paying me really well, and that was going to help fund the movie. And it was about something I really believe in. So it was like, you know, it was sometimes as a filmmaker, you just got to kind of go with the flow. You got to ride the wave, because it's the movie is a living thing. You know what I mean? Once where the inspiration of that movie came from, I don't know where, right? It comes from some organic, spiritual, metaphysical place, and it's alive. And then I put my energy into it. A bunch of other people helped me put energy into it. So now it's a thing. You know what I mean? And that thing is, sometimes it's going to get made when it wants to get made, not when you want it to get made. You know what I mean? So a lot of filmmaking, you know, has to do with patience and timing, and I truly believe that the timing of this whole thing, all these weird things keep happening, very coincidental things keep happening that show me that no, it's, you know, it wasn't supposed to get made this summer. It's going to get made when the timing is right. And I'll end this long answer with this: that's really what the movie is about. You know, in my life, I've experienced a lot of crazy coincidences, crazy moments of chance. When I was doing the wrong thing, these weird things happened. When it was like stopping me from doing that thing, when I was doing the right thing, a lot of weird things happened that would show me that I was going in the right direction. And that happens a lot in my life, and that really is what higher is all about. It's about something else going on in the world that's kind of like guiding us. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that answer. Actually, that probably answered the other questions on here as well.
Yeah.
One question I wanted to ask. I'm gonna check the time real quick. Okay, yeah, we're good. One question I wanted to ask. This is something that we've talked about before, which is, so, you know, Hawaii's kind of going through this whole coronavirus pandemic, and, you know, people say that Hawaii is centered around tourism. That's a big thing over here.
Right.
But now there's a lot of the government saying, okay, tourism, that's not something that we can truly just solely rely on. Can filmmaking be maybe another thing that supplements Hawaii's economy going forward during this time?
That's a very great question, and I have a hopefully a good answer for you. So, you know, the way that films work nowadays, the business has changed, and so the way that films work nowadays, the film industry, is that we go after tax incentives. So if a movie is made, like for instance, at one point Louisiana had the highest tax incentive. So if you noticed, for like 10 years, a large portion of movies all took place in Louisiana. right? Then it became Atlanta and New Mexico. I mean, New Mexico actually was first, but so a ton of movies would fall because they give you like, 30% on the dollar, right? So let's say if you have a crew member hired locally, you're paying them $100, you get a kickback from the state of $30. You know what I mean? If they have a 30% tax incentive. Here in Hawaii, I think we have a 20% tax incentive or something like that. If you have $100 million movie, that movie is actually only going to cost you $60 million. And then the state's taxes will pay for that business, pay you back within like the first like 6 months, right? That's an attractive way to make movies, and that's the only way that they make movies nowadays, right? Is how much money can we save on this? And so, and that's why Hawaii Five-0 and Magnum PI and Jurassic World and all these movies, they come here not only because it looks great and the crews are great, but because the tax incentive is so attractive. Now, that being said, we're going through the coronavirus right now. And I had just had this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who works in our business. And the thing is that, a lot of movies will shoot abroad, right? They'll shoot in foreign countries and stuff. I wonder if those movies that we're thinking about shooting in another country might just come to somewhere locally, right? The thing is that if you still have, if Tom Cruise, or maybe not Tom Cruise because Tom Cruise is fearless, but if you have actors that are hesitant about traveling to the Philippines or traveling to somewhere else abroad, Caribbean or wherever it is that they're planning on going, that has blue skies and palm trees, if they're paranoid about going over there, they might just, I don't think they're going to be paranoid about coming to Hawaii, right? It's 5 hours away from Los Angeles, not too far from anywhere else. It's still in the United States, and the coronavirus cases, thank God, have been pretty low here, right? We've been super, we've been following the rules and abiding by the rules of the state and the country. So I think we might get lucky. We'll see. I hope I don't jinx it, but I think we might get lucky, with a huge influx of movies that that will go somewhere else. They may come here. I don't know if that's true, but I'll tell you one thing, Gavin. And because people ask me this question sometimes, like, oh, the citizens, they pay for those taxes, and those taxes are paying for your job, and that's true. I mean, I have zero ego or attitude working in the film industry. You know what I mean? I am so lucky to work in the film industry and do the thing that I love to do, because guys like you and the rest of the people that live here pay the taxes for those movies to shoot here, right? And so I am your servant. We work for you guys, right? But with that said, I will say this. Having a movie shoot in your state or in your city has benefits that pays dividends that you can't even possibly imagine. Like, it's kind of like for instance, it's kind of like having a sports team, right? Like Green Bay, Wisconsin. What is going on in Green Bay, Wisconsin? Not a whole lot, right? It's a small town. But they have the Packers. And the Packers are huge, right? So that team stimulates that economy. It brings in a lot of interest. It brings in tons of ticket sales. People are spending that money in that town, and that money is staying in that town. When you bring a movie into Hawaii, for instance, they bring it in, let's say, $100 million. All the people that are getting paid on that movie, they're spending their money locally. They're buying products here. They're going out. They're going out to restaurants here. They're tipping waiters here, right? All of the local people that that receive money from those movies, all their money stays here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something is going on in your town. Your town is alive. There's going on. Even if there's traffic, you're like, oh my God, there's traffic on Kamehameha Highway. Why? Oh, The Rock is shooting. Dwayne Johnson is shooting a movie out there. Jumanji.
Right.
Oh gosh, the traffic, blah blah blah. Right, but you're talking about something, right? Something is going on, and it stimulates the vibe, And old grandmothers to young children, they're saying, "Oh my gosh, The Rock came to our store. The Rock played at our gym, or you know what I mean." Something is
there's a spotlight, right?
Yeah, exactly. It stimulates the economy. If there's nothing going on, then there's nothing going on. And usually when things are stagnant, then
I agree.
Then there's possibly negative things happening, right? People are, but when there's stimulus and you're like, oh yeah, Hawaii 5-0 just blew up a car in Waikiki. Like, there's something going on. And I'll be honest with you, we don't have a national sports team, right? We've got UH and we've got the football team and all that, but we don't have the Lakers here, right?
Yeah.
But what do we have here? We got big movies that shoot here. We have gigantic network TV shows that shoot here. You know what I mean? Some of the biggest, right? There's not that many gigantic network TV shows, and we've had some of the biggest. Lost, Magnum PI, 5-0. I mean, those are like 3 of like maybe 50 of just like the huge shows that were on television at that time. Not even. There's probably less than that, right? The biggest movies, right? Jurassic World, Kong vs. Godzilla. I mean, there's not that many blockbuster movies aside from like the Marvel movies. So like when you have that amount, those that stuff here, all the smaller stuff, the Japanese commercials, the Japanese productions, the small German films, the small independent local films, right?
Right, Baywatch. Yep, like one of the commenters said.
Yeah, Baywatch, right? Baywatch was the longest running, one of the most successful shows of all time, right? And that was here, right? So it's big. It's big for this economy. You know what I mean? And from everywhere from the local vendors, right? You have like City Mill, Home Depot, all the people that work at Home Depot, but like even local businesses. I want to focus on local businesses like City Mill and like the locally owned gas stations, or all mom and pops,
all the food places. Yep.
The food places, right? I'll give you a prime example. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I could have been born and raised here, but my dad was working in Los Angeles at the time. And the reason I left was because was during the recession, everything had stopped in Los Angeles. We had no tax incentive for the film industry. And it was just like 2008, 2009. And a lot of the film industry business had all left. So they went to New Mexico, they went to Louisiana, they went to Canada, they went everywhere. And that city was a place of desperation at that time. Not only were we going through a recession, but for the people in my industry, they were struggling. And I can tell you tons of people that just left town and they went and moved to Louisiana. They went and moved to New Mexico. They went and moved to the places that had the tax incentive. And I don't just have friends in the film industry. I had friends who worked at hotels. I had friends who worked at retail shops, restaurants, and they were all struggling. You know what I mean? Because when you have a movie star coming in at your restaurant, now that restaurant is big, right? You're like, holy crap, Matthew McConaughey just ate here last night. Julia Roberts, this is her favorite restaurant, right? Now that place is something more people go. People go where people go, right? Where people are. And when all the business was leaving, there wasn't as much money circulating, and there wasn't as much stimulus circulating, and that place felt dead. And And I know I'm not the only one that was feeling that. And that's really why I came to Hawaii. And during the recession over here, Hawaii in 2009 made upwards of $600 million. $600 million was brought to this economy from shows like Lost. Oh God, I think 2010 it was like Jurassic, or it was like Battleship and all these other movies. It was like one after the other, right? I mean, can you imagine? That's some people didn't even feel the recession because there was so much money and there was so much business circulating here. You know what I mean? And I guarantee you, it saved a lot of Hawaii at that time. You know what I mean? And then I think in 2010 it was even bigger. It was like close to 700 million. And you can look it up. It's online, but that's a ton of money. I mean, if you're bringing in $700 million in business here, I'd imagine at least 500 million of that is staying here forever. You know what I mean? That's just the way it goes. You know what I mean? You know, I'm not sure, but I mean, I'd imagine a good chunk of that money, close to $500 million, is at all helped. You know, to you know, because all those people they're shopping, they're buying stuff, you know what I mean? They're spending their money, they're buying houses, and you know what I mean? They're renting their apartments, and so it's nothing but positive. The film industry can be nothing but positive. I mean, it can literally save a state if it's played well. You know what I mean? And I'm a true believer in it, not just because I work in the industry, but because I work in the industry, I can see it firsthand. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't eat at my family. We don't eat at franchise restaurants. We only eat at local places. I don't buy if I buy clothes, you know, I try to buy clothes locally. And you know, I try to keep my money here as much as possible. Yeah,
definitely keeping it local. Fairai, we're running a little bit off out of time, but maybe a last statement.
How many minutes do we have left?
I would say maybe a couple, 2 or 3 minutes, maybe.
Does it say timer?
It doesn't. Yeah, there's no real timer, but I know for it only covers an hour. But I kind of know when I started, so.
I think we started at like 6:10 though.
Oh, 6:10? Really? Okay. Well,
yeah, but
maybe to sum up some of your points, and then
yeah, fire away.
And then yeah. So whatever you maybe some lasting statements, something that you want to tell young aspiring filmmakers. That would be a good subject to talk about, and people that want to start doing short films or even have ideas. What kind of advice would you have for them?
Yeah. So I would say the best piece of advice I could give to anybody that wants to be a filmmaker is you live in the most exciting time in the world to be a filmmaker. You know, back in the days, you would have to buy film. You would have to get your hands on a film camera, and you'd have to edit that film. And now you're talking about thousands of dollars. You can literally take this thing right here in your hand, shoot, edit, and distribute all in one tool. You don't need anybody, and you don't need to have your movie play at movie theaters anymore, right? The movie theater is right in your hands right now. All people do is stare at their phones and consume content all day long.
All day long.
4 to 6 hours, right? So if you make something, you have the power in your hands for the first time in the history of mankind. It's the most exciting time ever. And I would say, if you have any aspirations to do it, just do it. You have zero excuses. You get your friends, you get yourself, you set up your phone over here, and then you frame this shot, and then you go over here, frame that shot, go on iMovie or InShot or any of the other 100 apps that you can edit with. It's so easy. It's ridiculous. And I would say that the most important advice I can tell for storytellers is to, for a while when you start out, what you'll do is you'll probably start copying people. So you'll be like, oh, Christopher Nolan did this, I'm going to try that. Or Michael Bay did this, I'm going to try that. Or the Safdie brothers did this, I want to try that, right? And then eventually you'll start to find your own voice and start to find how you do things. And I think that's the most important thing, is to, you know, nobody's looking for the next Michael Bay. You know what I mean? I mean, people want to see the new and what's fresh, and that's where you'll come in. Is where you're providing something. You're contributing something to the form. You know, and make mistakes. Be brave. Don't do what everybody else is doing. Try and think outside the box and do things that other people aren't doing, so that when people watch your movie, they go, oh my God, I didn't know you could do that. Or that was weird, but that was kind of cool. I've never seen that be done before, you know? And also, when you're looking to tell stories, nothing's better than your own story. So the story of your grandmother, the story of your life, the story of your parents, you know, those are the best stories. You know what I mean? Because those are stories only you can tell, and not stories that anybody else can tell. And your story, you know, there are many people like you out there. So if somebody relates to your story, you've just made somebody feel less alone in the world. And I think that's really the true power of movies, is to make us all feel less alone and more connected. And that really can save somebody's life. You know, somebody could be feeling like they don't want to live anymore. They're feeling suicidal. All of a sudden they watch something that you made and they go, you know what? That guy was going through the same things that I was going through. That girl was going through the same things that I was going through. And now I feel like I'm not the only person going through this right now. And that might just give them a reason to live. And that is, I mean, that is the, you know, we are human beings we are servants to each other, and we are here to help each other. I truly believe that. The water falls on the plant, the sun falls on that, shines on that plant, and then the flowers grow. And that is what we are. We are nature. And so we can help each other, then this life is worth living. And there's nothing better than the feeling of helping somebody. That's it. You could have millions of dollars, you could have yachts, you could have a Ferrari. Nothing, that stuff is not going to last. It won't sustain you. But if you're out there helping people, oh man, it's worth more than gold. It's worth more than gold.
Definitely. Hey, Fairai, thank you again for joining us and, you know, sharing your story, sharing about Hire, and you as a filmmaker, as well as your family as in the film industry.
Yeah.
Can you tell some of our audience where to find about more information about Hire, as well as especially some of your short films?
Yeah, so you can go onto, or you can YouTube my name and see a bunch of old stuff. It's Fairai Richmond, Fairai, last name Richmond, Richmond. You can go onto my Instagram at FBR Films, and then Hire has its own Instagram. It's at Hire the Movie, and then we have a website at www.hirethemovie.com. And yeah, you know, please pray for us, because we were supposed to start shooting in June, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So I'm hoping that we start production in July, August, around that time. And you know, if it doesn't happen, then it's no big deal. It'll get made when it wants to get made. What my biggest concern is that I would ask more so to pray for everybody in this world right now who's going through struggles. I know a lot of people that are dying. They've lost loved ones, and people are hurting for money and financially. Anyways, yeah, that's
okay.
what I want to say. You know, I just want to pray for everybody. I know, you know, everybody's going through hard times right now, man, and that's the most important thing. You know, movies, business, all that. is all, those are the luxuries of life. Those first world problems, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But yeah, and I'm super grateful. I'm super grateful that you had me on,
Oh, of course.
and yeah, man, this is really my first interview on social media, so I'm super grateful.
Yeah, I wish one thing I wish IG did was extend these lives past. I don't know why they just do it for an hour, but I wish they extended it.
Yeah, I think if you become certified, then
Oh,
then you have other privileges or whatever. One
okay.
day, bro, one day you're gonna be
What?
certified.
Then we can do we can do a big one. We can let it go past an hour.
Oh, you know that guy Gavin SUGAI, man? I know that guy. He don't talk to me anymore though. He don't return my calls, but I knew him.
Oh no, I never forget people, man. Especially people that are good, are good people.
Right
Like
on.
you, you're a good person. So I'm definitely gonna, when I get there, or even when you get there, man, we'll remember each other, of course.
We'll see. Getting there is, I don't know where there is, but right now
Yeah,
I'm happy where I am.
exactly.
Wherever I get to is wherever it was supposed to be. You know what I mean? I don't know. I believe in that. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
I'm gonna work my ass off though. I'm gonna work my butt off to get to wherever. You
Mhm.
know, really getting
That,
there is really, honest to God, getting there is to be at a place where I could do what I love to do and make a little bit of money at it
mhm,
to keep myself and my family alive,
mhm.
and then hopefully, you know, to get to a place where I can help people. That's really, I'd like to become successful so that I can just help out a bunch of people. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Mhm.
That would be the game. That would be the game plan for me. You know, because
Yeah.
I
What?
love to just end my life just doing charity. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That would be that's my passion. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
totally get that. That's like for me, I've always told people that I want to get to a point where I could live off of just 10% of my income, so that the other 90% I can just use to help others and be able to fund films. People that are growing up filmmakers, I would love to help fund their projects and help give them their shot to really feature their stories. So that's
it's the truth. It's really, it's
Mhm.
funny you say that because um, like, I had this idea. I have a friend, Mitchell Viernes, and you should interview Mitchell. I don't know if you know
Mhm.
him, but you should
I
interview.
was I was supposed to be in one of his short films in the back in the day. I think it was like 2015, I think. But yeah, that was yeah.
He's really talented, and I had an idea um, for this film that I won't say because I think it's a good idea.
Mhm.
And so, and I don't know if I'll have the time to make it. And
Mhm.
so, but I'm very passionate about it. And so I wanted him to make it, and I want to just produce it. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I want to foster his talent.
Mhm.
And and the same thing with Sky.
Yeah,
I,
definitely.
yeah, I just have tons. I just have tons of ideas and and treatments for stuff. And I love to make I love to produce something for Sky Bruno as well,
Mhm.
or vice versa. You know what I mean. We just help each other out, uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, and that's really, that would really be my dream. It's like, come back here and help young people, make their movies and make their dreams come true.
Mhm.
And that's the whole thing, man. Hopefully, once one of us Hawaiian um, local filmmakers, not doesn't have to be just Hawaiian, but anybody from here or that
Mhm.
lives here or whatever. Hopefully, somebody can kind of become successful and represent Hawaii just like Taika Waititi did for New Zealand,
Mhm.
so that they can shine a light on this place, because I think that there's so much talent here, and we really haven't had our day in the spotlight in Hollywood, in the major film scene.
Mhm.
And there's been guys, of course, that have come out of here, but nobody really that like, you know, I just don't feel like we've had our day yet. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because like, I mean, you've had in New Zealand, you had like Taika, but before Taika, I'm sure Taika saw Peter Jackson and Lee Tamahori and Jane Campion and a bunch of other people that came out of there
Mhm.
and did big things. And he goes, you know what? I can do it. Oh yeah, I can do it. Those guys did it. I can do it. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that just paves the way. So
They broke the mold, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, they broke through
The barrier.
right,
Mhm.
and they opened it up for everybody else. So
Mhm.
I'm hoping that somebody can do that. And yeah, man, that's it. I'm just grateful, man. It's funny because I'm gonna leave this interview. I'm gonna eat some dinner, and then I'm gonna go straight to the studio to finish up the scoring the musical score for our proof of concept that we've been working on for like 2 weeks. You know, and
Right. Yeah.
movie making, man. I suggest it. I don't suggest it to anybody, but if you really need to do it, then I'm here to support you.
Mhm.
But it ain't easy, that's for damn sure.
But I definitely think it's rewarding. It's a crazy experience, but it's really rewarding as well.
Oh man, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like the feeling of, like, you know, when you spend one summer with a bunch of people that were strangers to you, and then
Mhm.
you go and you work 12 to 16 hours a day, blood, sweat, and tears, and you're usually not there for money. You're usually there because of an idea.
Mhm.
One idea that everybody goes, you know what? That's a good idea. I'm gonna give you weeks of my life and all of my strength, blood, sweat, and tears. I'm gonna dedicate it because of that idea and because of this like interesting ragtag group of people that came together. And usually, you know,
Mhm.
we're all like just a bunch of artists. We're all like the high
Mhm.
school projects. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And we found our place in this wonderful little artistic form that we all can share. We all can share our interest and love and passion together. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you'll never forget that. If the movie turns out good, it's even a bonus. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, even if it turns out whatever, you're never gonna forget that time. You know what I mean? It's a magic. It really is a magical experience. So it's been
Mhm.
a great joy of my life, and I'm super blessed that I found something that I love. That's it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Fairai, thank you again for joining us, brother. Thank you for a great interview.
Came perfectly, my brother.
And yeah, we'll see you guys later. And if you guys have any more questions for Fairai, of course you can DM him. Please follow both of his accounts. His FBR Films, right? Is that
Yeah.
your main account? And
Hi.
then Hire the Movie as well. Yes, please follow both. And stay tuned. You know, Fairai has some big projects coming up, and you know he's just gonna fire with it.
Yeah, man. Some big things are happening. I'm actually gonna have a casting call here pretty soon, so I'm gonna be reaching
Mm.
to a lot of people.
Awesome. Yeah. Stay tuned for that, and then when Fire Eye shoots that out, I'll send that on my story as well.
Thank you so much, Gavin.